name is Kate Scarlatta, and I'm owner of For a Digestive Peace of Mind. Today's post and video is really about my own personal GI story, and this is part of the I Believe in Your Story campaign. So back in 1994, several years ago, was really sort of the beginning of my GI or digestive health story. I was pregnant with my second son, just 3 months pregnant, and I woke up with abdominal pain. And it was really a pain that I had never experienced before, just an uncomfortable kind of cramping pain. So I called my primary care doctor, and the office suggested that I just take it easy, that I probably had the flu. So as the day went on, the pain and cramping just got a little bit worse, and I felt a little lightheaded and weak, and so I decided to call my obstetrician. And my obstetrician office suggested that I come right into her office and be evaluated. And by the time I got there, I was really kind of clammy, a little bit weaker, and I ended up passing out. And so my obstetrician suggested that I go into the emergency room and be evaluated to be admitted, probably based on my symptoms. So I went into the hospital surgical unit, and they observed me. They weren't sure if maybe my pain was due to an appendicitis, but they really couldn't do a lot of imaging because I was pregnant. So there was a lot of observation, and as I stayed in the hospital bed, I progressed. My symptoms got worse, and I requested pain medication. And the physicians were monitoring my white blood cell count to see if there was presence of an infection. And the white blood cell count was really not changing, and so they didn't feel that there was an infection going on. And honestly, I felt somewhat unheard. They thought that my request for pain medication was unfounded, and obviously I was pregnant, so they were being careful, but I really didn't feel like I was being heard. So I stayed in the hospital. It was another full 24 hours of observation, and my obstetrician came in the next morning, or the mid-afternoon, and she took one look at me and said, "Please take this patient to the OR." So the surgeons agreed, and I was taken to the operating room, and they gave me a spinal and cut through my abdomen and saw that I actually had a strangulated dead intestine that was gangrenous. And when they witnessed this, they then gave me a quick, we need to put you under, and put a mask over my head, and that was that. About 6 hours later, I woke up and learned that I had 6 feet of my small intestine removed, that the baby survived the surgery, and I was moved up to a regular floor. When I got there, the surgeons came to my room, and they really felt terrible because they really probably didn't listen to what I was trying to explain them. But without imaging, they really didn't have the metric to determine what was going on. So I'm certainly not blaming anyone, but just stressing the importance of really listening to your patients. While I recovered in my hospital bed, I shared a room with a middle-aged woman who had just had a hysterectomy. And to say my progress was easy, it wasn't. I was in a lot of pain, I was uncomfortable, and I was pregnant. And so I was worried about my unborn child and the effect of the surgery on him. I had a central line in for nutrition, and it was a complicated case. I had an NG tube down suctioning my stomach, which was very uncomfortable, and it was a pretty miserable experience. So I remember apologizing to her because it must have been horrific for her to have to listen to me, really. And she said to me, please do not apologize, because your strength really helped me be strong in the process of healing from my surgery. So my message to you really is how sharing your stories and putting things out there can make it easier for other people. Every day while I was in the hospital for 10 days, I would call down to the obstetrics unit to ask a nurse to come up with a Doppler to listen to my abdomen to hear my son's heartbeat. It was always an emotional time, and every time I cried, every time I heard his little heartbeat, it was really a victory for both of us. And I can remember saying to the surgeon, thank you so much for saving my son's life. And they said, you're really lucky to be here too. 3 years after I got through the surgery and had my middle son, I decided that I really wanted a third child. And so I consulted with my obstetrician and my gastroenterologist to make sure that this was a smart decision, and they were completely on board, and I had my third baby. Very healthy boy. So 10 years after my initial surgery, I reflected on how far I had come. I was the mother of 3 children at this point, and I trained and ran in a marathon. I started my own business, and fortunately, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and I became really well versed in digestive health. And this is really where my business bloomed. But 10 years after my surgery, I also started experiencing a new symptom. And this was an abdominal bloating that would progress as the day went on. And my stomach would blow up, and I almost looked about 4 months pregnant and had colicky pain. And I could pretty much tell you it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It didn't seem to really matter what I ate, although certain foods certainly made it worse. And again, I went back to various doctors to get some guidance. And the gastroenterologist sent me for not only 1 CAT scan, but 3 CAT scans. And even though my CAT scan didn't look particularly healthy, they really weren't sure what was going on. So I became, as many of you that are listening probably can relate to, the Google Queen. And I kept plugging in anything relevant to my medical history. And one of the things I noted was my folate level was elevated. And I wondered why, because I wasn't on any folate supplements. So I plugged in elevated folate. I plugged in the fact that I had an intestinal resection and did not have my ileocecal valve that was removed. I plugged in anything I could think of in the Google search. And what kept appearing was small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So I fired or moved on from my gastroenterologist and presented at another office, as again many of you do as well, being frustrated. And I suggested that I thought I maybe had this condition and that I would like to trial some antibiotics. And when I had the antibiotics, my symptoms went away. This was after a 1.5 years of going through testing. And really, my husband couldn't travel. It was a very difficult and dark time for me, as I know many of you that struggle with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth can appreciate. After I had the antibiotics, I also learned about, shortly thereafter, started learning about more about other dietary measures to help with some of the symptoms slight residual symptoms I was experiencing. I adopted the low FODMAP diet, and that provided even a little bit more relief. And that was a really a big turning point overall in the way that I personally felt. My kids now are 25 and 22 and 19. We added a crazy chocolate lab into our mix, and my digestive symptoms come and go, but for the most part, I can say that they're very well controlled. I travel the world and have a very fruitful life, and for that I'm really grateful for all the research and hard work that has come in the last few years understanding the landscape of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. As you can see, sharing my story has made me feel somewhat vulnerable, but I'm also glad that I have the courage to share my story with you. As a patient myself and a healthcare provider, I feel I really offer a unique perspective. And I understand what my clients are going through. I understand those of you that suffer with SIBO, what you're under. And one of the things I really want to help all of you out there is to get the help you need, and to direct you and provide the education that you need so that you too can feel great and move on and live the life you deserve. Be patient as you're deciphering your digestive health issues. I think that's one of the most important things because we're all different, and understanding each and every one of you and your digestive health scenario is like doing 1,000-piece puzzle. It's putting pieces of the story all together. And at times you may think you'll never figure it out, but patience and perseverance and determination will really will get you to the finish. So follow your instincts, find a trusted group of health professionals to guide you, and share your story. By sharing your story, you will raise awareness of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and irritable bowel syndrome. And by doing that, it will be healing for you and inspirational to others. Thanks for listening.